Hey everyone, this is the first episode of The Wash. My name's Kagan. On my right, I have my co-host Richard. Richard, introduce yourself.
I'm Richard. I'm a float soul. I'm here to vibe and talk about stuffs.
Sounds very
Doesn't
good. On my left, I have Asayo. Asayo, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Masayo. I'm Alamau. I'm just here to vibe, talk about the topics. You already know the vibes. Drink my little cup and my coffee. You already know the vibes.
Alright. You said you had something you'd want to say, Richard.
oh oh yeah, okay. So like for the wash, your logo could be like a washing machine, like rolling.
That's what
All
I
right,
was thinking that too. You never know. The Washbar, the raccoon in German.
it's a raccoon in a washing
Sitting on
machine.
a washer.
Yeah, it's like Rotom from Pokemon as a raccoon. I don't know.
Yeah,
Don't want
a
to get
raccoon.
back on the animal human stuff. You know how I feel. We'll discuss that later. So today we're going to be looking at four main topics, or three, however you want to separate it. We're going to first talk about inner Earth theory. Then we're going to talk about like cryptids, dragons, leviathans, sea monsters, all that crap. And then finally, we're going to talk about the existence of like pagan gods, Fenrir, Thor, Zeus, stuff like that. So we're gonna start with like a really brief summary of what inner Earth theory is for y'all that don't know, both
Mhm.
Asayo and you, Richard. So the inner Earth is this concept that the planet Earth is actually like all the way hollow on the inside. So they say that there's no like core and all this stuff, and that under there's all this I guess it's just like land, like in the King Kong movie, where they go down. That's inner Earth, where they have like the mountains and all this crap. And there's all this stuff that like posits it, quote unquote. Like it's been debated for like the past 300 years or 400 years, something like that. And it goes back like so far to where like Native American tribes and other like I guess regions would all say like in Germany they would say that their like great grandfathers came from underground, or that in like Mayans, I guess, so this so far this dates back, the Mayans would say that their forefathers all and ancestors and all this stuff came from the land underneath the earth, and that they'd come up through caves. And I want y'all's opinion on this, because scientifically that's not possible, but how would all of these different, you know, I guess cultures, religions, ethnicities all have roots believing that this was a thing. So
Uh,
we'll knock it off to Asayo. What do you think?
yeah. So I'm actually kind of excited about this one. So here's my take on it. So, in my opinion, I think maybe they stumbled in a cave and saw paintings of like you know old caveman paintings and all that, and they probably got the wrong idea. Like I imagine that one cave just went really far into the ground, and some cavemen probably lived there like a long time ago, before those people walked in the cave, and they probably saw those paintings and they were probably like, "Yo, that's crazy." Because I don't know, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me when I hear about this. But I mean, I can understand like why they would get that idea, because like nobody really knows what's in the core of Earth or any planet for that matter. So I mean, I can understand why that theory exists, even reaching so far back then, because like you don't. It's kind of crazy to think about, because if you dig down into Earth, like you're just gonna keep going until you hit Earth. Like the crust is so deep, so like we don't actually know.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what science says is in the core, I mean, I kind of agree with that a little more, because it makes more sense to me because of volcanoes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine a volcano being a volcano any other way if there wasn't,
Yeah.
like magma in the Earth's core. So that's the only way I kind of diverge from what they say about inner Earth theory. But I mean, I can understand it though. So I'm not completely against it. So I can understand where they're coming from with that one.
So, so Richard, what's your take on this? Actually.
Yeah, so like I kind of agree with SIO on the like them people. originating from like underground is because like of caveman shit, right? And like people used to live in caves, and there might be like a big enough area underground where they like maybe lived in, maybe like did stuff under, but like not to the extent where there's like a whole world under our world.
Hmm.
Scientifically speaking, it's like I could assume like the theory of like what's it? What's it?
Inner
Fucking
Earth theory.
yeah, inner Earth. I was gonna say like Hollow Earth. It
No,
was
same
like
thing. They are the same thing.
okay, like inner Earth theory would be like asteroid hit, dust cloud actually just made land above the Earth.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that's interesting. Because I always thought like, 'cause, like one guy posits. He says, I think he was a World War I or World War II fighter or plane. He's like around that era. He flew planes. I believe it was World War I. And he claims that he flew over the like Antarctic and saw this big hole, and then he said he flew in the hole and found another world. And the thing is, like, that's really cool to claim, and if that happened, great for you, cool stuff. But like, I can't. For one, logistically, I don't think that he did that because fuel. And then you'd be going into a nosedive because he said it goes straight down. So that means if it goes straight down, he'd have to go straight up. And those old, biplanes, or I think,
Mhm.
well, not a biplane, but those old planes didn't have the capabilities that ours do now, and ours still kind of stall if you go too far, too direct. I
Yeah.
don't see it, and I understand inner Earth theory. It's really interesting to think because all these, like religions and cultures had that idea, the same idea, like the same opinion on that, and they all claimed like stuff would come from inner Earth, but at the same time, to them, inner Earth, like y'all might have said, it could have just been caves to them, because there's massive grottos and stuff where
Mhm.
there's still land. Like the Mayans believed we were born in caves. Like the world was like races were born in caves and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I don't personally believe in Earth. I think it's really interesting to think about because we have seismology and all this stuff where we could actually do science to see how deep we could go. And there's even like an experiment that did the same thing, and they concluded that there is no inner Earth. But
Mhm.
until I think the latest it was argued was the 1900s, people were still fighting for the idea that inner Earth is a thing. And this is so
Yeah.
interesting because this actually segues into our next topic. There's this really interesting discovery that happened recently with underground oceans, and we'll talk more about that later when we get to that topic. But the fact that there's underground oceans underneath our own oceans
It's
lends
crazy.
credence to the fact that there could be inner Earth theory. But then at the same time, it's like it's more understandable that there's a ton of water, you know, under the Earth than a thriving ecosystem because, for one, how's there light? People have claimed that there's trees and all this crap down there. And, well, there'd be no light unless like there was like
Yeah.
luminescent algae and all this crap, which needs light. Like on in most cases or all, I think, bioluminescent algae does creates its light from I guess it's kind of like photosynthesis. I guess it's like the energy it does to produce food lets off this light.
Mhm.
But I simply don't know enough about bacteria. I don't go to school for that.
Yeah.
But it
Uh,
just to me it's so unbelievable that there'd be more so an inner Earth other than inner oceans. I guess.
yeah. And speaking of inner oceans, like uh, uh, you know how like at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, I think that's the right one. But at the bottom, there's like there's an ecosystem down there, but they get like no light, but they live in like pure darkness, but they adapted to it. And
Mhm.
so like the idea of like advanced underwater oceans, I could kind of believe that one because of what exists in the Mariana Trench. But as far as like an advanced underground land civilization, like that's kind of a stretch
Mhm.
to me because like scientists say like there are prerequisites for life to exist, and one of those is sunlight, and
Mhm.
another part of it is water. So I'm sure you can find water underground because there are probably a ton of underground water deposits. But as far as sunlight, I mean, that would just be really hard to prove to me that they can somehow live without sunlight, because most can do it, you know, but and probably a select few other species. I only really know about moles living in complete darkness on land, but like I'm not sure it would be the best solution for most species to do, you know, or
Hmm.
I'm not sure a lot of species will want to do it because of like the challenge that it would bring. Because I feel like living on land, sure it has its own set of challenges like predators and you possibly being prey to something,
Hmm.
but I feel like you have a better chance on land because you know you're not underground. You can see everything, get light. I mean, I'm sure underground the air is probably trash. So
That's a good point because they'd have to be
yeah,
plants.
yeah.
Realistically, there'd have to be plants. Like there are like algae. Well, I don't even think it's algae. It's bacteria. They're called like space bears or something stupid. They're like these little. I think they're called water bears actually, and they're these little. I guess the best way to say I guess is microscopic animals, and they almost look like really fat bears in hazmat suits, and they can live in
Mhm.
space.
Tardigrade.
Tardigrades, thank you. Tardigrades. They live in space. So I mean, I can imagine microscopic life, but I can't imagine something as advanced as like let's say like a blue whale or
Yeah,
a deer because it's just not possible. And that's if inner Earth theory's proven true, because
yeah.
it's so outlandish in current like science. There's like no reason that that would be plausible. Like there's plenty of life in caves and deep oceans and all this stuff, but I cannot foresee there being life way under the earth because on top of that, that leads to the question of like, how did it get there? Because if there's not like
Mhm.
a lot of the theories that they come up with were like, well, the holes are at the poles of the earth. And if that means it's at the poles, that means that it was like hundreds of thousands of years ago that they were able to go down there. And
Yeah.
if that's true, we're going back to what the dude said in his plane. Why did that massive hole just open in the ice? Like that doesn't make any sense. So that
Yeah.
just kind of leads me to believe he was probably just like high up in that high in the altitude or something. I don't know. But he was different. What do you have anything to add on this, Richard?
What's it? It was like the idea of Hollow Earth theory is like a cool storytelling concept,
Hmm.
and so maybe like back in the day, because like no one you're gonna record history, and it's
Hmm.
probably gonna be boring as hell if it's just like, oh, we came from caves, let's make it exciting. Say like, oh, there's a whole world we came out of. And when it comes to the guy in the plane, you know, yeah, he could have been high, he could have flown upside down for like 10 minutes, and then flew right side up, and that's how he came up with that idea. And then there's the what's it? When it comes to like light sources under there,
Hmm.
there's shit like anglerfish, animals that can produce their own lights.
Yeah.
So maybe, but like the thing is, everything about inner Earth theory is being held back by science,
Yeah.
right?
Like
And
almost
so
everything contradicts it.
so science is like something to provide us logically, right? Something to give a sense of everything,
Hmm.
but like it's also a limiter to like what could happen
Yeah, the
and what.
forward thinking and
Yeah,
philosophy and stuff.
and so like people with like that think inner Earth theory is a thing, or that are like big followers of inner Earth theory, is just like fuck science. Because
Like
there are
flat
things
Earth,
that
bro.
science can't explain. Yeah, yeah, flat Earth, bro.
I hate
um,
that so much.
dude, like okay, inner Earth theory has like no sense to it, and storytelling wise,
But it makes
it's
more
pretty
sense.
good. But it makes more sense than flat Earth.
Yeah.
Forgot. Oh my
I mean, fuck it.
dude.
Let's go off the rails a little bit here. Let's go off the rails. So flat Earth, like let's think about it. My thought has always been when they say flat Earth, how deep is the Earth? Is it like Minecraft where you hit bedrock, you can't go any farther, or is it
Nah.
like, are they saying that flat Earth is so flat that it looks like okay, you go to the zoo, you put a penny in the machine, and it comes out as this like really weird oval thing, and it's real thin, because the matter's stretched out so much.
Mhm.
So does that mean people who say that there's flat Earth, yeah, they're saying it's flat, but my question is how deep is flat Earth? Because if they're saying that, that means the water, and they explain, well, there's these massive, Arctic ice walls that hold the oceans in. There's a couple things that I, have issues with, but my main thing is the depth. Like, obviously, I know we aren't on a flat Earth. It's scientifically, like, not possible. We have photos. We can see the curvature of the Earth. Like, almost everyone has seen the curvature of the Earth at least once. You go on a big hill, you know, in whatever state you're in,
Yeah,
you can see the curvature of the Earth. So that's just
people have been to
facts.
space.
Exactly. People have been to space. And then, but my thing is depth. So are they saying, like, the flip side of Earth is nothing? It's just rocks?
Yeah, bro, you
Or
fall.
is it like the upside down? Like what is the flip side of Earth to these people? And at that point, how are we rotating for days? Are we like going in a circle, or are we going in like some like, I
See,
don't know. It's crazy, bro.
on the rotation, they think the sun
We're the
goes
center.
around the flat Earth. Yeah, they think that we're the center of the universe.
That's like 1800s thinking right there. Even that's
Yeah,
pre that. I think what
and
Galileo was 50. No, I'm not. I'm just gonna sound stupid. Galileo was way back when. Copernicus.
also on the flat Earth. See, to me, flat Earth makes no sense because Pearl Harbor wouldn't have happened
Yeah,
if
exactly.
flat Earth existed. Because yeah, I'm sure you know how the attack happened. They used carrier jets, and then the suicide bombers flew. Carrier jets took the suicide bombers halfway, and then the suicide bombers flew the rest of the way because
Yeah.
they weren't going to go back anyway. So, I mean, and also the route they took because Japan was right next to the islands, the Central
Yeah.
America islands. I believe that's where that's at. But they were like right there. But if we're going by flat Earth, that trip wouldn't have happened because they would have had to go across pretty much all of Europe
Yeah.
and then
That's super
Africa
far.
No, okay, but like for flat Earth
and
theory,
then yeah.
oh yeah, sorry, but like for flat Earth theory, there's only one pole. It's the North Pole, and the map like of the world surrounds the North Pole, and the Arctic is the ice wall.
That's
Hmm.
and then like back to what my boy Asayo was saying. Like the if flat Earth is a thing, would that mean that Russia's like the most defensible place? And the thing is, maps are wrong. That we're going another level deep off the rails here. Maps are wrong. In America, in like the 50s, when maps were being mass produced, there was a big push for America to be on the left. Because Americans lead left to right, when you would look at a map, you would see America first. And that was kind of just not really a propaganda, but to put more, I guess, importance and, I guess the word is significance to America in America. And not saying that that same map isn't used all over the world, because it is. But this map was made wrong. Like Greenland is massive on the map. It's huge, but it's smaller than Texas. It's like way smaller. And then if you drag like America over Russia, Russia's so much bigger and stuff like this. Like the map was supposed to cut part of America as well, and they didn't want that. So they redid the map, and that means that flat Earth people are also completely misunderstanding like where the actual center of, not saying that the equator's wrong, but like the layout of how the map should actually be read. And if that's true, because science dictates that the way that it's supposed to be read is the way it's supposed to be read, then that means that the common flat Earth conception is wrong on purely where they think the continents really are. Because it's just like my boy Asayo said, we are east of Japan. But when you look at a
Yeah.
map, we think, man, Japan is really far east.
Yeah.
But really, it's a really close west. And that's like on flat Earth. Like I don't understand how people can, and to be fair, most people don't believe in it anymore. The only people that do are just people who, without talking bad, are simply ignorant on the facts. They don't know,
Yeah.
and ignorant isn't inherently bad. It just means a misunderstanding or a non-fully informed person. Not calling them a moron, not calling them stupid, but ignorant of the facts, which are the Earth is not
Mhm.
flat. There's so many. Have you seen like the thing where they even prove the Earth isn't flat with this light test? Like this group of flat earthers do this light test, and they set up these huge cardboard walls in each hole, so the light would shine straight through the hole if it's flat. And then they said they conducted it, and it's all videoed. and the light isn't shown through the final hole because of the curvature of the Earth. And they're like, we just proved ourselves wrong. And one guy even sent himself into a rocket to prove that it's flat Earth, and he saw curvature. So it's not flat,
Yeah.
you know? And it's so crazy. And to rein it back in a little bit, this goes back to Inner Earth, because at least Inner Earth, it doesn't necessarily have credibility, but at least it feels more real, like, I guess, more real or possible, because it's not denying the fact that the Earth is a globe. It's not denying the fact that we rotate around the sun. It's not denying the fact that we're always moving, and it's a cool thing to think of. It's awesome. Like, there's so many cool stories and stuff that could come from there. Like, you could, argue, the Earth is a living thing in the inside, or its organs, or something. Like, you could, because way back when, you could be, an indigenous tribe of some place in the world, and you could be, like, chieftain whatever, or chief whatever, or jarl whatever, and you could be like, yeah, by your deity's bones, our ancestors come from this hole in the ground where there's clouds,
Yeah.
and because really back then you could just make stuff up and it happened. Like, it's just so, and this all plays into what we're talking about today. It's just so there's so much in it, like, for like reality, like, there's just, it's such an interesting topic with so much to think about, and it's very basic. It's because the second you hear it, you're either like, yeah, or no way. And I'm sure we're all more or less no way on this. Like, there is no inner
Yeah.
Earth. But it's
100%.
an interesting thing. Yeah. There's, like, no way. There's just no way that there's inner Earth. It's just like,
Yeah.
like, and it's like, well, if you drilled super deep, you're just gonna show up like in King Kong, like in King Kong, they go down there in this ship, and then they're like, oh, the magnetic fields are flipping, and I sat there, and when we watched that, like, all together or whatever,
Yeah.
I was like, how would the because I'm ignorant on these facts, so I could be wrong, but how would the poles flip when you aren't going past the core?
Yeah.
And the poles, I don't know, it's a movie,
That's actually facts.
but it's still inner Earth, so at least it's like a more relevant example for people. I would like to put in a disclaimer: we're all stupid. We aren't at all professional. We are just talking for fun. Interesting crap. We're friends.
I have a degree in personal science. That's the science of oneself.
He has a degree in Lamau.
Oh yeah.
He's got a
I
degree
feel
in
like-
floating.
That's it. I feel like the origins of, like, inner Earth theory were like, oh, like in Germany they said they came from caves, and the Mayans down in, like, South America also said the same thing. But, like, I feel like at a certain point, creativity is, like, becomes stale, and at a certain point, everyone has at least said something, and that goes all the way back. It's just forgotten to a certain point.
Yeah,
so
like,
it's like one at, like, a certain point they came up with a bunch of ideas on, like, how they originated from, and the one that stuck was, like, the underground thing, and it's because that kind of made sense. And it's like, why would two different places, or even three or four, come up with the same thing? Well, it's like they came up with everything, and they, like, stuck which one made the most sense. It would be, like, coming from underground.
Yeah, I agree with that, because the way modern science is now, we make a lot of hypotheses about space, but we don't actually know anything about space. But we tell a lot of students, like, oh, this planet looks this way because we think that the core is made of, like, acidic acid, and the rain is acid, like with Jupiter. Like, we don't know what's under the clouds of Jupiter, but we'll say it has a core and all that, but we don't really know because we can't see past the clouds. We haven't been to Jupiter, but I guess the telescopes can kind of confirm. But we say that there's a giant tornado on Jupiter, but, like, I feel like there's no real way to confirm it. But I'm sure the telescopes probably did. So I do believe the tornado. But like Richard was saying, like, we just make a lot of hypotheses about things.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And, like, it goes back to, like, talking about stuff until something sticks. It goes back to, there's a theory, and it's, it's realistic. It's more or less it's wrong to say it's a law of nature, but it is. In the saying is, if you put, a trillion monkeys in a room and they typed on a typewriter forever, they would eventually write Shakespeare's plays. Because of, like,
Hmm.
in infinity anything is possible. And it's because that sticks, like, there's all this stuff like Stonehenge and all these
Yeah,
conspiracy theories and stuff. But at the same time, if you
and the
see it
ghost city.
rain, like, let's use rain. But we hear rain in VR chat right now. It's raining in VR chat in our mansion or whatever. It's raining, and then humans are like, well, why is it raining? And then they're
Weird
like,
flex, but
well,
okay.
it must be, it must be, like a god or something. Like, it must
Yeah.
be something bigger than us. And it's
Hmm.
just such an interesting topic that we're going to touch on later, when we discuss deities. And I think we had a good discussion about inner earth theory, because, like, really there's not a lot to discuss. It's more of how you feel about the theory itself over everything, because it's just so outlandish at this point. It's
I
not
feel like
something debatable, really.
Yeah. Crazy.
yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like negligence to like certain things makes you come up with your own ideas. Because like,
Hmm.
what's it? My cousin, not knowing anything, when it rained, he made like a joke or like made an assumption to like, yo, it's God, and he's like pissing on Earth. And
Yeah.
he was like a little kid, so he was like questioning. He was
Yeah.
like, why is it raining? He's like, what's causing the rain? He came up with that idea. So it's like what we think of is just something we do to make sense of something.
Because your brain always wants everything to make sense. Like with ghosts and stuff, you always, there are people that don't believe in the supernatural and stuff, and we aren't really discussing that here. But the fact is, there are people like in BuzzFeed Unsolved. There's BuzzFeed Unsolved. The Shaniacs and Bugaras, they do supernatural stuff. They're like ghost hunters, whatever. One of them's a believer and one's not. And when anything spooky happens, the believer freaks out. The other one's like, "Oh, it must have been a gust of wind," or like, the joke that's like, "Oh, I said Credence Clearwater Revival or something," and there are people that have a stigmatism with that band, where if you say that name, it means you're like cursed or whatever. Or if you see a black cat, or if you walk under a ladder, or if you break a mirror, open an umbrella inside, all that crap. That's all reasons to explain something crazy happening that people made up.
Yeah.
It's interesting though.
And hmm I was about to say something. I forgot. Hold on. Give me like 5 more seconds.
What's it? As also like a superstition thing is the Bloody Mary thing with the mirror.
Yeah.
That shit
It's
scared the fuck out of me as a child.
as a
Yeah.
dude, that is a new word right there. That's a new word. I like that one. That's way cooler than child. It sounds better. The Kyle.
uh. Okay, so I remember what it was. So on the topic of like when Richard said his cousin made the assumption about rain, when
Hmm.
I was a child, I did the same thing. I used to think it was tears of God or tears of angels
Hmm.
because it just seemed logical to me. Like it fell from the sky and heaven
He died. He died on us.
Yeah, he did.
And then some of this is
was in
influenced
the
by
sky.
like
So I was
early.
like,
Oh, he's back. Hey, we heard
Hey,
it. It was just like a 15-second gap. Hey, man.
oh,
So,
I lagged there.
yeah, you
yeah.
good though. We got it.
You
We
finished the
heard it.
sentence, bro.
Yeah, you did finish it. It was like a very dramatic pause, though. My boy Crab over here eating his pancakes was a little
Hey,
worried.
bro.
I'm
Fuck
always,
this man.
what's his name? Steve? No, it's Crab Brave Kepri, bro. Bring him back.
Okay, we're bringing back Capri.
Yeah, bring that boy back.
Alright.
Here he is, man. So,
What's it?
hmm.
The crabs. When you put them on their back, they sleep. I used to do that shit a lot when we ate crab, because we'd like buy a fucking shitload of crab to like
Hmm.
make for a barbecue, and that's what I did as a kid. And I just flipped crabs and made them sleep.
I didn't know they did that. I guess you
I
learn
think they
something
pass
new
out.
every day. Is it? Hey, let me see. Is that a daddy crab or a mummy crab?
It's got no gender. Its bottom literally has
Oh
nothing
yeah, that's not. That's. Hey, that is a very forward-thinking crab right there. So
Yeah.
we talked about the existence of the under ocean, and that's like a perfect segue, because we talked about that when we were discussing inner Earth theory. Because scientists recently found it is very possible that there's oceans under our oceans, And it's an interesting thought because that opens up the world of deep sea gigantism, because that's already a thing,
Mhm.
right? Deep sea gigantism,
Mhm.
and I'll give you a brief, very brief, I guess, definition. Deep sea gigantism is the tendency for species of invertebrates and other deep sea animals to be larger than their shallower water relatives across a large taxonomic range. And they say the reason why could be cold temperature, food scarcity, reduced predation, and increased dissolved oxygen concentrations. In human speak, normal speak, it's they're so deep, and there's like no predators, and there's more oxygen. Like, I guess this helps if you're filled in on this. Dinosaurs, dinosaurs, T-Rex,
Yeah,
you know,
they're
stuff like
big
that.
because there was a lot of oxygen back then.
Because back then, the most of or all animals lived in the ocean, and all of this life formed on land, and so this overabundance of plants meant an overabundance of oxygen, and when they went on land, the increased oxygen allowed them to be much larger. So since there's increased oxygen density in, the deep, we have things like the giant squid. What's another big thing? I guess the Greenland shark, I guess, sorta, kind of. And it's interesting because this thought of, deep sea leviathans, the under ocean, things like that, the existence is interesting because if you're, a God-fearing man, in the Bible it talks about a leviathan that was slain. And then in, Norse mythology, there's serpents. In, Greek, they have Scylla. I believe that's Greek. Greek Scylla, right? Something like that.
I
And
think
graboid.
so.
And then they have, things like that. And I just want to know, do y'all think that deep sea gigantism can really make Leviathan-esque creatures and that perhaps they've gone extinct? Or, I guess I should fill you in a little bit, give you a little bit of background information and let you decide off of this. Do y'all know why megalodons went extinct in reality?
Uh,
There was it their prey? Like didn't have shit to eat.
Basically, so what happened is great white sharks evolved, basically, or sharks in general, like the common modern day shark. It evolved, and it was able to get to the food much faster than the megalodon, so the megalodon starved. But their gigantism, they were like relics of a bygone age. So the lack of competition in the deep, do y'all think, because there is competition, don't let that confuse you. Like, when whales sink when they die, it's just like a feeding ground for,
yeah.
eels, lamprey. Well, I don't even think lampreys, sea worms, all this stuff. So do y'all think leviathans, both biblical and in the other term, which is, like massive sea creatures, could exist or do exist? Like, what are y'all's opinions on it? And we'll start with Richard this time. What do you
I f-
think?
what's it? I feel like they could exist, and that's just because I want them to like that they could exist. But I feel like isn't it like we've only explored like what 8% or like
Some
some
extremely
some
minute number.
yeah low number of like what the ocean actually is. So I feel like deep down, if like deep sea gigantism is a thing, deep down there still could be stuff, but like for them coming up isn't worth it,
Hmm.
right? And it's like the blobfish. Yeah, that it looks like a normal fish underwater. Once you pull it out and you release it from its pressure, it turns all blobby. So like for something to be extremely big to come up to the surface, it might cause it more physical harm than it like
Hmm.
should. So there's no point for it to come up. And since we don't have the technology to go down that deep without like getting hurt, there's no way for us to disprove nor prove that
Hmm.
leviathans and stuff existed.
I think that's interesting because, like, I feel similarly as the there are, giant octopus that can come up. It's rare, but they can come up, and they're big. But I find it very interesting that, back to all the cultures having all these tails. But there's also, a I guess a feasible reason that sea serpents were a thing, and it's that they existed, albeit they're remnants of, dinosaur times. And but the thing is, the fossil I guess the fossil dating of a lot of, I guess the carbon dating of a lot of fossils is what I should say, really disproves that. But then there's stuff now, like there's debates in the scientific community trying to prove whether or not the, Christian biblical event of the Great Flood happened, and there are dinosaur fossils that back it up and those that disprove it. Like there was apparently recently a dinosaur fossil found from 4,469 years ago, but that dinosaur was thought to have lived, like 20 million years ago. Like way, way back, or however far. And it's just interesting that there's such a gap, but that also means, carbon dating is not the most reliable. And it's just, it's really interesting because, like, for college, I had to watch this video on this mine, or I guess excavation site, of all these ancient leaves. And these leaves came from an ancient forest 16 million years ago. The reason that they're preserved so well is this area was a massive forest, and then like a dam or something broke, and it filled up with water super fast. So all the trees, just turned autumn, they can, infer, lost all their leaves. They sunk to the bottom of this super, super cold water, and they stayed there. And then over thousands and millions of years, they hardened. So now when you actually open up the 16 million year old fossils, you can see the original color of these leaves before they oxidize. And that's interesting as they're dated 16 million years ago, but we don't have something similar with, fossils. Like they can pull DNA and stuff, but there's no way to be positive, as there's no record of actually how long ago this was, because for all we know, the way that carbon dating works will be proven to be wrong, I guess. Like be proven to be, I guess, flawed. I guess flawed is the word. Like it's not actually as good as it looked. Put my man next to me. You can get on here. So it's interesting to think, about all this. So for Leviathans, an explanation that some people posit is that, like I said, dinosaurs outlived when they were supposed to die, and it could, feasibly explain why they aren't around anymore. It's because they finally kicked the bucket thousands of years ago. But then there's, all this evidence of giants and stuff like that, and it just, how do y'all feel knowing now that, carbon dating isn't necessarily the most trustworthy, in that, like we found coelacanths in Japan, and they were thought to have been extinct for so long. Like they are dinosaurs, but they still exist. So how do y'all feel about the existence of Leviathans? Richard, again, I guess we'll start with you, because I kind of cut you off. I apologize.
Oh no, you're fine. We should go with Malik, because Malik didn't say his
how do you
2
feel
cents
about
on water
existence
creatures.
of Leviathans, deep sea giants, things of that nature?
So with that, I mean, I think that if Leviathans do exist, it's kind of like what Richard said earlier. I don't think they will come to the surface, but just for the fact that like most surface creatures are pretty small, because like when you think about animals or fish that live close to the surface of the ocean, I think about like schoolfish. Like whales do live on the surface because they have to breathe, but I don't think that a Leviathan will want to come up just for a whale, because it will be such a hassle to take down. I think it will hunt other things in its nature, or as big as it were in its location, not close to the top, because like Richard said, I don't think that if it came all the way up, it would be too safe for an animal of that size, because a whale is built to do that. A whale is built to jump out of the ocean and go back in, because it needs to breathe. It's a mammal pretty much. But I don't think that an animal that's in the sea I don't think it would be too beneficial for it to evolve like that. And also I think that if it like in the Bible, I'm not sure what the Bible says about a Leviathan, but I'm almost positive that it dies by human hands. Is that correct? Or
it's slain by either a saint, an angel, or a human. I can't remember off the top of my head, if I'm being honest. But it's slain. In correlation to that, I think I think that if an animal was that big, I think that humankind would want to kill it,
Like if we ever found an animal that was that huge, we're gonna like with the mammoths. We hunted it for the wool and for the meat. It was a prized hunt. So I think that if a leviathan existed back then, or a sea animal that existed that big back then, I think we would have killed it for a prize hunt.
Hmm.
And also, uh, hold on, I had it in my head. I lost it. What was it? What was I gonna say? What was I gonna say? No, I had it. Oh, also, okay, I remembered it. I also think that some things are made up, like unicorns. I think they're
Yeah.
based on other animals, because I think a unicorn is based off a rhino. I
Oh,
think,
actually,
yeah.
I'm gonna inform you real quick. I learned this recently. Apparently, Norse people, like Vikings and stuff, would slay narwhals and then say that their horn is unicorn horn and sell it to nobles across Europe.
Oh,
Yeah, interesting.
uh,
That would
that's
make a
so.
lot of sense.
Yeah,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Makes hella sense. Like, dude, some Norse guy shows up, or whatever they are, Norse, Russian, whatever. They're Slavic, I guess is the better word. Shows up with this massive, like, horn, and he's like, "This came from a horse with a horn." They're like, "Wow, that's crazy. Let me buy that." And then, they in a little sultry for the internet, they thought it was an aphrodisiac. They'd grind it up and eat it so that they could get it on with their wives. I don't
I
think
feel
it
like-
worked though. I feel like it's just horn.
Listen,
Carrots and
yeah,
nails.
you remember like the horn, bro. That's why horn equals horny.
Oh, you right.
Oh,
That's big
okay.
Yeah,
200 IQ over there.
bro, 200
IQ.
fucking Celtics back then, bro, or Slavics back then. They got 200 IQ. But I feel like
Dude, you want? You want? Bring
big
that thing
horn,
over
big horny.
Big horn, big horn, big horn.
Yeah,
I feel
but
like there was no need to change it. Like even if they were like, because I feel like seeing a narwhal for them was the norm. Was a norm, right? To see a creature
Yeah.
underwater. But like, if you would have went to Europe and told people, "Yo, this is from a sea creature that looks like a dolphin but has a horn on its face," right? Like people would still buy it and be into that. But like because for them it was the norm, they had to change it so that for them, like it would be exciting for them and other people. But right, like there's a bunch of mythical things that like could have just been basic things, but they exaggerated to like sell it.
Hey man,
Yeah.
it's a big brain. Like this is some fine,
Yeah.
like height of Nemean lion for Hercules. Man, this low key just went and glocked a lion, and then was like, "All right, this lion hide impenetrable." And they're like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, but don't test it." I don't know.
you
Maybe
get 3
something
block
like that.
stacks.
Yeah, I don't know, man. And then okay, so like you were saying about Leviathans, the existence, and I think if Leviathans exist now and ever, I feel like they would need to be slow moving, to save energy, because they'd have to live in the deep for gigantism to like really make sense. Or
Yeah.
they would have to be surface predators that eat such a massive volume that we wouldn't have been able to miss them. So I guess that could play into the theory that you're saying that, maybe humans exterminate them.
Yeah.
Or, some other creature. But if they are deep sea, they have to move slow, like whales,
Yeah.
to conserve energy. So, like, that's why, like, the Megalodon died. Like we were talking about earlier, it was slower.
Mhm.
It had to conserve its energy because it was so large. But the fact is, if they exist now, in, let's say, something like a serpent-like, let's refer to the popular game Subnautica. There's these Leviathans that have that are real fast and all that stuff, but in reality, they'd be slow, colossal creatures. In my opinion, from everything I know scientifically and stuff, they would need to be, for them to be the size at which I'm envisioning, which is quite large, thinking like the size of,
Well,
bigger than 2 tugboats end to end, something quite large. I'm not going
Yeah.
like massive, 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 but something
Yeah,
quite
but it doesn't
large.
stay-
It would need to move slow and conserve its energy, and it also have to still eat quite an insane volume. So they'd either need to be bottom feeders or dormitory animals that they stay dormant most of the time, or something of that nature, because it's
Yeah.
just I just can't think scientifically of why. And albeit I'm no marine biologist, I don't know crap, but from everything I do know, I can't foresee a deep sea creature existing without having to be so slow to constitute the size and be able to keep that
Hmm.
size. Because like, crocodiles and alligators are, believe they're both theoretically immortal. The only thing that kills them is the inability to eat what they need to survive.
Yeah.
There's, like, it's insane to think, people don't think that there is something immortal. There are immortal creatures on this earth. There are, these
Jellyfish.
jellyfish that
Yeah, those
Yeah.
turn into
jellyfish.
babies, yeah. And it's just, it's crazy. So my thought is, if there are literally immortal beings on this earth, and I mean immortal, like, obviously they can be killed by mortal means. I guess I should, say that. They can be, murdered. But by natural causes, minus predators, they are immortal. They can't die of old age. And it's just an interesting thought. It almost makes me think, anything can be possible. And it's an interesting thought to have, as, I feel like there's going to be more and more debate. Let me back it up. There's a historical thing that happened. I'm not going to say the scientist. I cannot remember the scientist's name. He's a popular scientist, and in the, oh gosh,
Oh gosh.
1800s, I believe, he dedicated a large amount of his life, like 20 years or something. Or it might have just been 6 or something. It was while he was going to college. He looked for eel testicles. He could not find eel testicles. There's no eel that he had ever seen that had testicles. And through, over 100 years, we still have not seen a pair of eel testicles. And I know that's like a really weird thing to see, but the fact is, science cannot prove, as of right now, like there's no, I guess, physical proof. No one's had their hands on a pair of eel testicles. Because eels seem to grow them at need, use them, lose them. All seaborne eels are born in the same spot in the ocean. They all change, basically. So they're all born under the Pacific garbage patch. I say
Hmm.
seaborn, not like it'd be really crazy if, I had some eel in my lake and that man walked across the earth, But there are things that science can not yet explain in the ocean and
Yeah.
have just discovered to not rule out Leviathans. And with the now we can finally get to the under ocean stuff and discuss it, because to y'all, how do y'all feel that the existence or possible existence of an ocean under our oceans opens up the possibility for Leviathans?
Feel like
Go ahead.
I feel like if there was an ocean under our ocean, I feel like the chances of a Leviathan would be pretty huge because I know this is kind of off topic, but I mean I feel like Atlantis came from somewhere, and nobody makes up that kind of story without having like some type of inspiration for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like a Leviathan is the same case. Like somebody got it from somewhere. Somebody saw a really big fish,
Mm-hmm.
be it a whale or a giant squid, and they were like, "Yo, that's kind of crazy." So I feel like even if Leviathans don't exist, I feel like it's it's something that we can't rule out because we haven't explored the whole ocean and we don't. It's not under constant surveillance. Like NOAA doesn't have the funding that NASA does. No, NOAA has like a portion of that. NASA is like out here doing whatever. If NASA explored the ocean instead of space, I feel like maybe we would know. But
Mm-hmm.
you, you know, I just feel like the funding for that type of search or that type of development in underwater species, it isn't fully or well funded.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do think the possibility of an underwater ocean and a Leviathan would be pretty strong, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, because it's just like, to me it's just like too big of a plus to rule out, because there's things have happened that blew away scientists, like a lot of things. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you think about it like that, I feel like maybe there could be something that could blow away scientists again. Like be it doesn't even have to be a Leviathan. Like there was an anglerfish that washed up on land, and like most scientists say that, like, or most marine biologists, they say that like they don't make it up that long because not only do fish eat away at it, but it has to float up so far its body decomposes by the time it gets to shore. So like that was kind of strange, and it blew away scientists. So like stuff like that just gives me hope, you know. So like yeah.
What's it on the Atlantis thing? There was like the idea that the background for Atlantis and like the whole thing sinking and stuff was because there was an I what's it? Who was it that first brought up the story of Atlantis? It was it was a what's it? He was a philosopher.
Hmm.
It was like starts with his name starts with an S.
An S? Socrates?
Yeah,
Socrates.
yeah. I think it was Socrates. It might not have been Socrates, but we're just putting that name as a blank there.
Again, we're uninformed. We don't know
Yeah.
anything.
We're kind of on the stupid side. So
That's facts.
he came up and told the story of Atlantis, right? But there was like a historical event that happened that like a volcano erupted and destroyed an entire island, and like a portion of that island sunk, right? And so I forgot what the island is called, but in it the reason why Atlantis came up and became a thing is because he got the name wrong of the island. So he came up with Atlantis, and then the story of Atlantis came up and just like evolved itself into becoming a city of advanced technologies sunk. Because like the island that the story originates from is an architectural place and was known for its highly modernized architecture, and that's the essence of like why it was so futuristic in a sense.
Hmm. You know, on the Atlantis thing, there's like, you know, it's entirely possible that that island sink because there was this pirate port that was built on these islands in the Caribbean. And it was just, without going over it too much, it was basically this huge dock, like set of ports, docking town, you know, whatever you want to call it, where there's like brothels and bars and all this stuff and tons of docks for all these ships. Because of the way like the island was, it was really good. You could bring ships right up to it. And there was so much put on this island that the sand, because it was all built on sand, basically, with huge posts driven in the ground and all this stuff to hold them. One day, there was just so much weight, and there was a storm and all this stuff, and the whole side of the island fell into the ocean, as well as a bunch of, you know, buildings, and a bunch of people died, and that's something that is documented well enough and recently enough to lend credence to Atlantis, which, like we said, is off topic, but Atlantis plays in with, you know, sea myth. And there are people that claim, like, they found all these ruins underwater around the Mediterranean. Holy fuck.
Mediterranean. What?
Mediterranean, thank you.
There we go.
I was like, holy crap. I was like, how do I say it? Anyways, that sea, you know, they found a bunch of ruins that they think might be Atlantis, but obviously, how are you going to prove it?
That's
And
facts.
it will always be a myth, unless, you know, they can find some, you know, keystone discovery or latchkey. No, keystone would be the word. And it's just an interesting fact. Like, there are people who don't know stuff today. Like, I had talked to my grandpa a while back, and he didn't know that there was a land bridge that had connected modern day Russia to modern day Alaska, or modern day Canada, one of them. And that's how the Neanderthals came over to America, or the Americas. And he was like stunned by this fact. He had never heard it. And that just shows that, you know, there's stuff that people don't know today that's scientific fact for the youth. But in the future, you know, they might prove Atlantis. And then when we're, you know, 80, they'll be like, yeah, you didn't know that Atlantis was real? Oh my gosh. Be like,
Going there tomorrow
no.
for a field trip.
Yeah, I'd be like, I didn't know that. It's like, that's crazy, you know. So, and that could be, you know, deep sea Leviathans. For all we know, you know, in 30, 40 years, we'll be what? Like 50 or 60, you know, and be like, holy crap, you know. They just found proof of Leviathans, and the reason that there were never any bones is because the cartilage in the Leviathans was so thin it would dissolve so quickly, and they actually had, you know, like hollow bones or something. Like there's even
Yeah.
debates now saying that a bunch of dinosaurs could have just had wings with hollow bones,
See,
and
that's
that we
crazy.
just don't know. And I'm like, that's kind of crazy. You know, that's weird.
Dinosaurs could have been dragons, bro.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess we can talk about dragons. It's on my thing. Let's move on to dragons. We talked
Uh,
about sea for long enough. So,
coming, what's it? Speaking of like bones,
hmm
and how like the ocean is very undiscovered. The bones could just be too deep, right? Because
yeah,
like being the
underneath all the
Earth,
silt.
yeah, underneath all that silt, all that water, bones probably are just buried deep, deep under.
That's a good point. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, I could get behind that. And then the tectonic plates move. Like there's places on land where since the tectonic plates are moving, they had pushed up. Like mountains are full of fossils, and not being like, oh, the dinosaur didn't die on the side of that mountain. No, it had died on land, and with over thousands and millions of years, the tectonic plates pushed, and it rose it above ground. And that's interesting because that we're going even deeper now. That could, theoretically, there could have been even more to history than we know, because as you know, tectonic plates are made and disappear as they go, or as we think. Unless the
Yeah.
Middle Earth theory is true, the tectonic plates, melt when they reach the core, and more is formed on the opposite side. And so, I mean, theoretically, you could argue, one could argue, well, maybe there was civilization 16 million, or no, even longer than that, 1 billion years ago, and we're in like a time loop. People could, change it however you want, but the mere fact that you brought up the Leviathan bones, I think that's pretty interesting. Because I didn't think about that. I think that is a, that makes me want to believe it more, in all honesty. And I mean, it's not going to change my everyday life. If I think, well,
No.
maybe there's massive monsters in the ocean, I don't care. If they're that deep, they're going to stay that deep. They are not going to come up here. They'll die from depressurization or something, for all we know. For all we know, they try and come up, and then they just sink back down because they can't handle it, or something. And there's like brine pools in the ocean that these eels go into, and they're like oceans in the ocean, and these brine pools are real toxic. And when the eels go into them, they go into shock. Who's to say that there aren't animals living in the brine pools? Like there's so much that we don't know about the ocean that we cannot possibly come to a conclusive answer on a number of things anytime soon.
Yeah.
We
And
hmm
on the topic of dragons, uh, to me, like dragons are like kind of a stretch, but
hmm
I I do think that it might not be too outlandish because I mean Earth is pretty weird. We have some pretty weird animals. Like
hmm
we be having animals that can shoot their tongue out at a fly in a split second. So
hmm
I'm not completely against it, but I don't think that dragons are like what fiction makes them out to be. I don't think that they're these cool, amazing,
hmm
fire breathing animals or monsters. But I think that in the terms of like the specific term of what the dragon would look like, I think it would look like a wyvern,
hmm
because I think that makes the most sense to me. It's more realistic. I don't think a dragon would be like just a standard dragon with wings and four legs. I think it would look like a wyvern with just wings and legs,
hmm
and like be a little bit smaller in like the scale of a lizard,
hmm
possibly, or like the scale of a bat in a way. Because I think that's kind of realistic. I don't think that it would breathe fire. I just think that it would shoot acid or something,
hmm
like a Komodo dragon. But I'm not against dragons. I'm just like, we can be realistic about dragons. Like if dragons were real, I'm all for it.
hmm And another thing,
If they exist the way, yeah,
yeah,
you
like
keep going.
another thing is like there's a mockumentary done by Discovery ages ago. If y'all remember, there was a documentary about mermaids, and they were trying to say that mermaids were real. Well, that wasn't actually a documentary, but it was framed like it was real. It was a joke the whole time, apparently. Like it was a mockumentary. They did one on dragons, and they explained that if dragons were real, the way that they said that they would produce fire is that they would have, I believe it's either pure oxygen or methane in their stomachs, in that their teeth, they would keep platinum, like rocks, like they would have rocks in their teeth, and they would bite the rocks or something along those lines, or had platinum teeth or something along those lines, to where when they would bite down or open, their teeth would rub to each other, create a spark, and then they'd breathe fire.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. But my thing with dragons, and I think y'all can agree, is that, like, the theme of today is, if all these cultures around the world, separated by thousands of miles, have never had contact, believe in the same thing, there has to be a nickel of truth somewhere in it, like a little bit of truth, something
Yeah.
to it. And I think y'all can both agree there. Like, it's probable that there was something.
Yeah.
Like, there, we already talked about how there is stuff that we thought was never possible, and it happened. Like, there's even theories now that cuttlefish, the octopus, or I guess it's an octopus technically, isn't it? Something like that. Anyways, that it actually mutated from a squid with alien DNA. There's a theory about that now, because they have such insane abilities, the abilities, to change their body, look, texture. They're super smart. They're the only animals in the ocean to be able to do that, and they're like I said, they're super intelligent. And it's really crazy to think. It's just it's interesting. Back on dragons, I can't believe that Norse mythology has dragons, and ancient medieval times had dragons and all this stuff, and that there's nothing true to it. I mean, for all we know, there was some like clan of ultra pranksters or something. I don't know. Or maybe it was a symbol known throughout the land as, power. Maybe there was some unknown or unspoken understanding of it, or simply someone saw them like, that's cool. And then, Silk Road, it traveled all over the world. Everyone understood. It's interesting, and there. To back up, dragons wouldn't be as big as we think they are today, because we would think they're like the size of a bus or something. But in reality, thousands of years ago, when all this happened, or hundreds, even thousands, humans were smaller. Like, we were smaller in stature, especially way back when we didn't even farm yet, and that's way, 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 way back when. But humanity has grown taller over time. And that can influence, like, when you go to ancient ruins and stuff in real life, oftentimes the doors are shorter than you would think, and it's because people were smaller. So the scale of certain things has changed, and back on Leviathans, for all we know, that Leviathan is just the size of a blue whale, which is still quite large. But to people who are even smaller, they could be even bigger.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, how big a Leviathan is, I think it's like the size of a whale, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. And it just got skewed over time, because it was told over and over again in the perspective of the size of a person, not the changing genuine height of a person. And of course, over thousands of years, no one's going to be like, well, my father and his father's father and his father's father's height was this, and I'm this, so we're growing. Like, that wasn't something that was kept in track of. And I mean, we're talking about dragons, and it's just it's an interesting topic. Richard, how do you feel about dragons?
So when it comes to like what a dragon would look like, there's like normal dragons, there's wyverns. Oh, I'm okay. Hold on. But there's things like Chinese dragons, where they have
no wings,
extremely small limbs, they have no wings, and they levitate.
Yeah.
And so it's like the existence of dragons, like this goes with like the inner Earth theory, where like at some point everyone came to the conclusion of, we all came from people, because we went through all the ideas of how we started. And it's like that kind of goes for dragons. So like a giant beast, right? And it's all named different things, but they kind of come up with the same stature, right? But like a dragon in, let's say, Cambodian culture is more serpent-like, and is like a cobra, except literally a tiger.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so like it's
dragon.
Tiger dragon. Because like I think it's in the Cambodian mythology, the dragon, like I've known, or like what I've been told is a dragon,
Mm-hmm.
is a serpent-like creature that's similar to a snake, and it has a cobra-like head made of multiple heads.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a weird thing to explain, but like that's like the dragon.
Hydra.
It's
I
not a
guess
hydra.
like a Hydra sorta, but
It's like it's like if you, it's not like it has multiple necks and stuff. It's literally like if you took a blank sheet and put like heads all over it, and it's just the shape of a cobra. It's weird.
yeah, very weird.
Yeah.
Like that's a very interesting because obviously I am there's I am not hey bro, I'm from Mandalore, bro. I don't got dragons. So I mean, okay, so we've talked about dragons. Everyone knows about dragons. Who cares? They're dragons. You know, it's just a dragon. You know, it's just a dragon. So let's talk about something a little bit more like modern. You know, cryptids. You know, chupacabra, Sasquatch, uh, Goatman, New Jersey
Goatman.
Devil, Thunderbird, Big Bend Ranch,
sh-
Dinosaur.
yeah.
All kinds.
Okay,
of stuff.
so with the Thunderbird,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense to me because when dinosaurs existed, there was this pterodactyl
Mm-hmm.
that was like really huge. Like its wingspan was huge. I don't remember how exactly, but just know it was a pretty big bird. You know, like or a pretty big dinosaur, I guess you should say. And like when people bring up the Thunderbird, I don't think that it would have went this long without us seeing it, but
Mm-hmm.
I do think sometimes animals have a way of eluding humans in a good way. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
it took us forever to find that coelacanth.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Yeah,
What
it
is
took us
that?
forever to find that, but I mean, it would be really hard to not see this pterodactyl. In reference, it's like probably 10 times bigger than a falcon, and a falcon's pretty big. So, and like, it's really huge. I watched a documentary on it. So, I mean, I don't think that it eluded us this long, but I do think that people like telling stories about it because it's just so huge. Like, if I was an Indian or if I was like an Azteca, I would, and I saw like this fossil with a huge wingspan, I would for sure go back to my village and I would be like, yo, we gotta stay inside because they used to have these birds back then that humans hunted. Back on that topic, humans hunted this bird to extinction because it would come down, it would take human babies, and it would just fly away. And so the humans were like, "No, we can't have that because humans are so defensive, and you know we're an apex predator. So like, if anything threatens a human, we're gonna get rid of it." And so that's what we did to this giant bird that would just come down and take our babies. And so I think with the Thunderbird, I think that somebody found some fossils. And I just think that they kind of exaggerated because birds on a big scale have existed in a human's lifespan. So I think that in some cases, I think that the truth got kind of stretched in a way, and that's just my take on it. You know?
I like the theory of they're alive and they're eating our babies. So we hunted them. I
Yeah.
like the theory. It's a rock solid. They're eating our babies theory. You know the dingo ate my baby. It's a little off topic, but you know that saying, a dingo ate my baby. For the longest time, since we weren't alive when this dingo ate my baby thing happened, a lady went to jail because the court ruled that she like killed her baby or mistreated her baby. No, a dingo ate her baby. Like a coyote ate her baby, and they ended up finding the baby's clothes at its den like years later. And I was like, holy crap, a dingo actually ate her baby. So cryptids. Let's go a little bit deeper here, Asile. Let's go a little bit deeper. So like let's think a little bit more local in our state. The Goatman Bridge, Texas legend.
Nah, I'm not too familiar on that one.
Okay, Goatman is basically, I guess it's less of a cryptid. Yeah, it's not really. I mean, it's a local legend, not to us, but Texas is a state. I think Thunderbird's Texas as well, or that's Arizona or New Mexico, one of them, somewhere in the south. And the Goatman's a demon. I guess we won't talk about him. I guess we'll talk about there is
I think I do know Goatman actually. I didn't mean to cut you off,
do?
but I think I do know.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it the story where this woman had like 10 kids and one of them turned out okay, maybe it's not Goatman, but one
Definitely
of the
not
kids
Goatman.
turned out to be a horse,
What?
and it like yeah, it turned out to be like a it transformed into like a goat horse animal hybrid thing, and like
What?
I think that's the Jersey Devil actually. I
That
think
might
that
be
might
the
be
Jersey Devil, bro.
yeah, but I think that might be the Jersey Devil.
That-
Wrong person. I don't know what I'm talking about. See, we're
Oh,
not
you
too
know what?
bright.
You know what?
I,
We both have experience in one of the hottest states in the USA. You know, Louisiana. How do you feel about the Rougarou? We can talk about the Rougarou. That is a known cryptid. For those who do not know, the Rougarou is most commonly depicted more or less as a werewolf with yellow or red eyes that would lure kids into the swamp and kill the fuckers. So the Rougarou
Jesus.
is used as like a tale of don't go in the swamp. So, my boy
don't go in
Sayo,
there.
how do you feel about the Rougarou?
Uh, well, I didn't really grow up around too many bayous. I normally grew up in like small cities, but I do think that that story did originate from something like all stories, and I do think some type of wolf or like some type of dog-like animal was out here slaughtering kids. You know, because in order for me to believe in the existence of a werewolf, I would have to believe in werewolves in general. You know. And I'm not really too fond of like shape shifting, you know, like
Like
vampires, all that nonsense. Like,
skinwalkers, all that stuff.
yeah, I don't really find like a belief in that because it to me it's a stretch. Like, I just don't see how somebody could change their anatomy, especially a human, because we're scientifically not built like that. Like if we were squids or if we were able to regrow organs, I would totally believe that we could shapeshift into something. But you know, unless we grow a lizard tail and are able to regrow it back whenever, I don't think that we'll be able to shapeshift into a wolf. But I do think that something is out there slaughtering children in a
In the
morbid
math.
way.
I'll say
Yeah.
my time, existing down there, I guess, living down there, I was warned about it, and I was very scared. I'd have nightmares all the time, albeit I was like 9 to 10. But when I lived in the swamp, I lived 30 minutes from the ocean, and I was a foot above sea level. So if it rained, like all the houses were on stilts. The bayou, we had two bridges to get to the other side of the bayou. The town was split by the bayou, and if those bridges were closed, oh well, you're not going to school. We had days where we were sent home because an alligator was in the school, like stuff like that. So
Jeez.
when I was in the
Lucky
swamp,
dog.
the Rougarou was really scary. I believe in it flatly because you'd be out there in the swamp, you're with your buddies, and you would just hear howling, deep howling, and the fact is, oh, coyote. The thing is, we're in a swamp. Find it hard to
Yeah.
believe that there's a coyote swimming around in the swamp right now.
Yeah.
And it's
That's a
not
very
that I
odd
was in
thought.
like the deepest swamp in the world, but all around the town, it was too heavy, I guess, forested or swamp for there to be a healthy amount of coyotes. And you can say, well, it's a dog. Dogs wouldn't sound like that. And there was also, these little legends, like a very, very local one there was that we all had an understanding that you don't screw with the snakes, and that obviously that's good advice, don't screw with snakes. But the snakes in that town charged people all the time. The snakes were known for charging people. So you would like walk out and a snake would charge you. It didn't matter, however close, And you could argue, you're next to their nest and all that, but it was like almost superstition that the snakes charge you. And it was just a little bit, and it was among kids. It really wasn't among adults, but all the kids were like, "Oh my gosh, the snakes charge you here, blah blah blah." And I guess we'll go back to Rougarou. Like, there's a lot of stories about the Rougarou, and voodoo and hoodoo, and
Yeah.
you were warned heavily if you're in the. As a brief overview for anyone listening that has not visited Louisiana, Louisiana is two states in one: the North and the South. The South is very I guess traditional, southern, a lot of French and English, and it's very, for lack of a better word, hodunk. And I can say that, man. I lived there. I was hodunk. We'd go play in the swamp all the time, in our mud boots and all this stuff. And then in the north, it's all your businessmen, stuff like that. It's a whole different environment. And
Yeah.
deep in the south, there's superstition is so high you don't even speak about voodoo. You get weird visions and thoughts, and that plays into the cryptids because it's a whole other, voodoo and cryptids don't necessarily go hand in hand, but when speaking of the Rougarou, it does. The idea is like the Rougarou is either some skinwalker, like from, Native American legend, or it's some cursed
Yeah.
man, and all this stuff. And the Rougarou was just such a scary thing to keep us out of the swamp, and it kept me out of the swamp. It did its job. And then there's other cryptids, like, I do not believe in the chupacabra. I find it hard to believe that there's this little rat animal sucking blood out of stuff. But I do believe in the Rougarou, and it kind of contradicts itself, because why would I believe in this shape-shifting werewolf, man, but not the weird blood-sucking rat? And cryptids are an interesting topic, and everyone has a different opinion on them. Like, Sasquatch is, theoretically possible. There are many, species of giant ape that could qualify as Sasquatch, but then there's so many times that it's been, there's so many times that it's been, I guess, denied or proven wrong, So, I mean, it's just, my boy. It's an interesting topic, and I want your opinion on it, actually, Richard, because I don't know. We come from different backgrounds. I don't know if you have any cryptid stories, myths, tales, anything of that nature, how you feel about them, stuff like that.
What's it? I didn't grow up anywhere with a bunch of cryptic tales. I think that the idea of it is like, something to scare your kids, which makes sense and all, because like, you don't want your kid to do something stupid, scare them.
Mm-hmm.
To that degree. But I don't have anything that was cryptic, cryptic like tales, and I feel like most of it is generally made up or like a personified version of like an animal that did something at a certain point.
There's, like, without saying anything, we have local legends of our own in our hometown. There's supposedly a sect of witches in which some of my family members claim they've met. There's, the talk of our tunnels, and then,
People say the map of our town is a witch
pentagram or whatever.
pentagram. Yeah, it's weird.
Which is cab. I don't. But anyways, without saying too much, everyone has their own bit of local legends, and I believe in some, disbelieve in others, and if you believe in any, why shouldn't you believe in others? And I guess it comes down to interest, I guess, or I guess
Yeah.
I guess it's
I will
personal
say,
belief.
the one that I mean, I don't believe in it, but I mean, like, it's just creepy. Do you know the Wendigo? Do you know the story about the Wendigo?
The Wendigo.
It's very
detailed.
what you said.
I'm not detailed. I've heard of it, but I actually don't know what it is.
Actually, real quick, before you continue and explain, I am gonna say this. There were cowboys, in 1700s, however long ago, that were hired by Native American tribes to hunt Wendigo. It's interesting. That's all. This is a historical fact. You tell my mans what a Wendigo is. Hit him with the explanation.
So, a Wendigo is basically, if you ever find a deer skull out in the middle of the woods and you touch it, you'll hear voices that will make you go cannibalistic and start eating people in the woods. Like if you go camping, let's say me, you, and my boy Sandog right here go camping, and you pick up, any one of us pick up a Wendigo, well, not a Wendigo head, but a deer head with antlers on it that looks pretty sus. You might start hearing voices, and you might start getting hungry for human flesh. You feel me? So the Wendigo just drives people insane, and it makes you just want human flesh. And some stories, people put the Wendigo head on or the deer head on, and they wear it, and then they run up on their friends and they just start mauling them. And they just tear them apart. In the stories, that is. I haven't heard of any real accounts, but that it's just a crazy story, because like if something like that did happen, like what type of animal would have that much power to where when it dies, it can make you kill other humans, your own species. And animals killing their own species isn't anything different, because tigers kill tigers when they go hunting. If you're in a bear's territory and you're a bear, the bear's gonna, they're gonna fight each other. I've
Yeah.
seen bears fight, I've seen lions fight, but if an animal can like not only learn my language and make me and communicate with me when it's dead, but if it's making me want to kill my best friend, like that's some pretty strong stuff right there. And I think that's kind of up the alley with voodoo because voodoo is kind of like magic in a sense.
Hmm.
No disrespect to the culture or anything, but to me in a sense it's kind of like magic. And if I would assume that there's some type of enchantment going on with this Wendigo because
Hmm.
uh from stories I've heard, a Wendigo like will stand up on two legs.
Hmm.
Like the deer version of it will stand up on two legs and just start walking around, but it's still a deer skull, and so it's kind of sketch.
Hmm.
And so to me, that's kind of creepy, and it still speaks English. So
Yeah. Or
like
whatever language
it,
you
it's
speak.
just yeah. It in reference to your language, it'll speak
Hmm.
whatever you speak, and it's pretty scary. Like if I ever did encounter a Wendigo, I would be so scared, bro. Like I wouldn't, I wouldn't know what to do. Like I would probably just lay down and die. Like I would want to die because I don't want to be a cannibal. Like
Hmm.
I like nobody wants to wake up and say, "Oh, I ate a human and I want to eat another one now." Because to me personally, that was just like messed up my mental. Like
I'd
I
imagine
wouldn't
so.
feel the same.
You know.
So,
But yeah, man, that's just I
And
just hate
like
thinking about it. Like
Wendigos, like they after you eat human flesh, and it's most often like it's winter or whatever, and y'all are snowed in and y'all are starving, and then they eat one. You always are hungry. You only want human flesh, and then like in reference to the stuff I was talking about with like the cowboy hunters. So like these Native Americans would hire these cowboys because they don't want to kill their own people. It could be their chieftain, or it could be their daughter, or it could be their brother, blood brother, whatever you want. Whatever is significant in their religion, all that thing. And each tribe would have its own belief of Wendigo, but overall most of them did believe in the Wendigo. And the cowboys would go in, kill the Wendigo with a knife. I think specifically it had to be a knife, and they'd get paid well for it, and it was outlawed way back when. And I believe the last actual arrest, I watched a documentary on it, arrest or killing of a Wendigo resulted in the guy going to prison, and it was in Canada way back when. This group of Aborigines, the wrong word, indigenous peoples had called for this cowboy to kill their Wendigo. He killed it, and it was at the time where there was like a government, and he got arrested. But the tribe was so glad because the person had already eaten, like one person, and had sharp teeth and all this stuff. Like, he had sharpened his own teeth and broke his hands and all this crap and like walked deformed and all that. And it plays into the supernatural. Like, Wendigo, go creeps over into the supernatural world, whereas cryptids, are usually seen as mutated abomination animals, kind of stuff like that. And I feel like supernatural we'll have to save for another day because there's so much more to that, and it deeps into a
yeah.
lot of stuff. But I think I know, Richard, you said you didn't have very much on cryptids, Rougarou, Wendigos, all that stuff. Do you think you can see any possibility of that being real, or like do you believe in it
Oh,
at all, or anything of that matter?
I I straight up believe in ghosts. I believe in
Hmm.
like
The supernatural in general.
the supernatural in general. So like all this stuff is completely plausible. And if it
Hmm.
happens, it happens. I don't need science explaining me like that's the physics couldn't happen.
Yeah,
Like
because I mean, how can science explain ghosts? And if you
yeah.
and as a person,
yeah.
if you believe in ghosts, believe in spirits, believe in demons, believe in deities, all this stuff, science cannot prove those. Neither can they usually disprove it. And it's a topic that we'll have to go into in another day, I believe, because it's a deep topic it's a multifaceted topic. I believe is the correct word. So I guess we'll move on to our final point, or I guess real discussion,
Oh,
because it's
what's
going to
it?
be a deep one. Unless either of you have any more
Okay,
topics.
so on the topic of like
Hmm.
myths and stuff, and
Yeah.
like how over the progression of time, like it's like forgotten or like it's changed from fact to a myth.
Yeah.
And Do you guys watch Rick and Morty? Oh,
Not enough,
they're
but
like
a little bit.
A dabble.
there was like an episode I randomly saw, and it was like under the concept of this. And so what happened in the episode was like, oh, this dude like Morty showed up into a world, right?
Hmm.
And he did something, and where he was, he experienced different times. So like for them, it escalated. So like we're gonna stick with the timeline of like where he went. So like they were living their normal life. Something comes out of nowhere, right?
Hmm.
And then it's like, oh, it causes an incident, and then this starts to build up. Like, oh, this happened, and so like the this event happened, right? But like over the time, so they're trying to protect their area from like that ever happening again, right? So over time, like over the generations, the idea of, oh, let's protect this area because this one thing happened
Hmm.
slowly becomes a myth because it's never actually happening again. And then it does happen again, right?
Hmm.
But it happens after the fact that no one believes it, right? So and then it's a cycle of them preparing for it, someone being in disbelief,
Hmm.
and like it can get to the degree of like the person who is in disbelief that this event actually happens slaughters all that believed it happened, and then the event never happens again, right?
Hmm.
So it's like these things that are myths could be real, right? But
Hmm.
at a certain point in a generation, the generation decided to cancel it out
Hmm.
because it
Yeah.
was bad trauma. Wasn't good for their
Far
society.
fetched.
Yeah, it was too far fetched for it to be real, even though it was real
Yeah.
to at a certain point. And so that's like if you put that consensus to like all myths,
Hmm.
that's there's so many things that could have been real.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's a really interesting outlook on that because you could simply say, well, I don't believe that, wendigos are real. We'll use that as an example since we already discussed it and people, know what a wendigo is and the stories. So, like let's say my ancestors are Native Americans, which actually I am part Native American. Do you all know that? I'm Dakota Indian. It's wild.
About buoy.
But I'm as white as I could be. So no, I'm not that close. But somewhere in there, like 1%, bro, does that mean? Nah, I ain't gonna say that. It's not smart. Yeah, I've been rude. That's rude, disrespectful. So the the thing is like on Wendigos, let's say these cowboy hunters killed the Wendigo, right? And for the next 45 years, there's no horrible winters to where people are trapped, none of that. And then on the 46th year, they're all huddled up in their huts or their buildings or caves or wherever this group of people are, and they run out of food, flat out. It could be a group of 3, 4, 5, however many, and someone eats their homies, and then a Wendigo happens. So then they solve the Wendigo again, and then the tribe or group of people, whatever it is, would start preparing for that Wendigo again. And I think like what you said is interesting because that plays into everything that we've talked today, except for the Hollow Earth. Because you could see you know a lot of what we discussed be realistic because sea leviathans, what if, like my boy Sayo said, the amount of leviathans was more and they were hunted to extinction, so people quit caring. Or here's a great example. Here's a real life example. Cicadas, they go wah, wah,
Yeah,
the bugs, the see-through wings. They're fast, annoying, loud. They, I think, hibernate or sit in the ground for like 17 years. So on a very small scale, people might forget that cicadas even exist, and then one day they come out all over the world, and they're like, holy crap, they showed up, and then they decide to prepare because way back when they eat crops and all this stuff, and do bad. So
Yeah.
let's be like real extreme. This group of people terrified of insects, hate them, so they exterminate all insects, and then cicadas come out the ground, and the tribe's terrified. But then they go 16 years and it not happening, so they quit caring. And then the 17th year, they get jumped by cicadas. So, I mean, I think that's a good. Obviously, I was reiterating what you were saying, but I think that could help to explain or help reinforce some people's beliefs on myths as it's not necessarily that the myth has disappeared. It is that the myth has not occurred, or that the cryptid mutant, whatever, Rougarou or something, just has not struck, whatever, struck. Like we could argue, well, Rougarou due to it'd be kind of funny, but it's like, yeah, the Rougarou backed off because so many people they're building all these cities that didn't like the noise. That doesn't
Yeah.
obviously it's kind of I guess a dumb example, but I mean at least it's theoretical.
It's
you
all
know?
good. I get
So
what you mean.
I think it was interesting that you brought that up right as we were gonna swap. But I think that was good to get in. I think that was an interesting thought that can help validate people's thoughts on this whole, thing. Do you have any final comments on this, my boy?
The only thing that I would bring up is from The Witcher, and it would be a lesson, but like that's not even like a cryptid. So like I'm gonna have to say not really, because like the only other mythical thing that's kind of sus is a lesson that kind of gets my attention, but it's not even spoken about in reality. I don't even think lessons like really exist.
It's
I think
just
lessons
a
are made up.
Witcher thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say that, the Wendigo is made up? I don't think it is, but, it could be. Like, I mentioned it briefly, but I'll jump back to it before we swamp. At Big Bend Ranch in West Texas, there's supposedly a freaking dinosaur just running around. Basically like a big raptor. And there's like a single well-known photo of it running across the highway. And it's like, what? You telling me in the deserts of Texas there's a dinosaur? And
In
no
only one
one's
picture?
seen it? Yeah, in one picture? It's crazy. And it's just like, it's possible. I can't say no. I can't, I can't go out there and be like, that's not real. Fake. Because reality is subjective, and we won't go into it, but everyone's reality is subjective. Your red is not my red. Richard's red is not my red. Like,
I'm
we all
happy you know I'm
perceive
colorblind.
everything differently. Maybe you're colorblind. You're an Alamau, after all. And, my boy cleared the table. He said
My
no
boy
more.
said no more
I
dinner.
do like the crab. He's got a nice spot. My boy Steve. So,
Nah, his name's Capri now.
oh yeah, I guess we should call him Kepri, shouldn't we? My boy Kepri. Oh, thank you,
Even though
bro.
Capri's like a beetle.
The crisp-looking cup right there. And there's, it's just an interesting topic, and we can move on. We've talked about it for a while. I feel like we got a lot of good points in there, and it's not that we're even really making points. We're literally just discussing it because it's an interesting topic that is, intellectually. I just blanked on the word. I had it. Intellectually stimulating. That's the word. So let's move on to our final topic for tonight. The existence of gods not in a religious theoretical term or philosophical term, but more the topic of like Thor, Odin, things of that nature. Like in the game we play, Smite. All the gods,
Meech.
Thanatos, Hades, Amaterasu.
Before, what's
Yeah.
it, sorry.
Yeah, go
Before
ahead.
we talk about gods, like what's everyone's perspective of like the idea of gods?
The
So,
idea of gods, like, do you mean the?
like what is your what identifies as a god for you?
I think we should. Yeah, I think it's good to have a common definition. I think in this term, we're not speaking of religious, I guess figures. Rather, we're speaking of the existence of I believe the word would be extraplanar or elevated thought being that has divine power. Because we're not trying to say, this religion's not real or this religion doesn't have any credence to it. We aren't trying to do any of that, but we're talking about the idea of, I guess, what would traditionally be called pagan gods. That being, Sun Wukong, Thanatos, Hades, and like, Greek and Roman have like the same stuff, just different names. And I think it's interesting less of gods and I guess more of a general region's collective belief, I think, is more what we're discussing rather than gods, because the term God represents and symbolizes, I guess, an all-knowing, all-encompassing being. But in reality, what we're talking about are figures that are believed to rule in more, I guess, distinct regions. You know, like Poseidon,
Yeah.
god of the seas, or what is he called? Neptune. You know, but they're one and the same. But or like Raijin, god of what, thunderstorms, and then it's Fujin's god of the wind in Japanese mythology, and it's less of we're not really looking at the religious side of it. We're looking more at the collective understanding of it, and whether or not you believe it's feasible, as the all these different cultures have all these different gods, and like we were talking about really early on in the podcast, the example with rain. The Mayans, the Mayans believed that Shak was the god of rain. They would make sacrifices to him to bring rain. But we know scientifically that
Yeah.
precipitation brings rain. Precipitation is rain, rather. Evaporation, the water cycle, all this stuff. It contributes to rain. But like we've been saying, like the theme of all this is, kind of how do we know? How do we
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So, and not like I said, I'd like to reiterate we are we are not discussing religion more, so the collective consciousness of these areas and whether or not we see any credence in their thought, or how we feel about the idea ourselves, not
Yeah.
criticizing religion or anything, but how we feel that there could be entities that manipulate the earth in various ways across different regions. Like, Japan's gods are Fujin, Raijin, Amaterasu, Susanoo, like all these things. But, maybe this other province is ruled by a different god, and whether or not we think that's not necessarily realistic, but something that we would subscribe to. So, with that, stated, so no one gets their panties in a twist, and get cross or feel like they're being judged or anything, we're gonna move on to. I guess we'll start with
Yeah.
my boy Asayo. We're gonna go really specific. We're gonna use Greece, the most well-known mythological, and Roman. It doesn't matter, interchangeable very much. Um, the most recognizable set of pantheons. How you feel about the idea in general, from why people created these beings, either or if they exist, or how you think they would govern. It just honestly, just let your thoughts on the topic flow.
Alrighty. So, uh, I'll go over my opinion on pantheons, like in general first. I guess I'll start with that. So, like, my opinion on that is like it's kind of like what Wasabi said earlier. People, humans make things that we don't understand. It's like thunder. We didn't understand thunder, so we gave it a person because we understand people. We understand that people can sometimes do wild things, and back then, I'm pretty sure they were on some wild stuff. I mean, they were eating hearts and all that. So I'm pretty sure they thought whatever. So I'm pretty sure they were willing enough, as we know, they were willing enough to give that title to like a humanoid being, and I'm not trying to say, like they were wrong for doing that. I'm just trying to say like, that was their way of explaining why thunder was there, or why, somebody was good at fighting in a war like Ares. And in my opinion, I think that some demigods, I think that they were only demigods because they were really talented. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll use Achilles for an example. I think, in my opinion, I think Achilles only died because he got really unlucky and got hit in his heel. In his Achilles heel, I think that's why he died. Honestly, I think he got hit in his heel, and everybody just left. Because back then, I don't think anybody really was too good at being a field medic. I think they were all just like, "Oh, bro, you gotta, you got hit. That's tough. That's tough, yo." But I think it might have been more than that. I don't think he got hit in his heel, then just died off the gun. I
No,
think
for
that
certain.
maybe, yeah.
As you can't walk
So,
without an Achilles heel, as you know, like your foot basically becomes like a floppy mess. So like if he
yeah.
did theoretically, lose his Achilles heel, and obviously we weren't there. Like you were saying, like I highly doubt that he just got murked in his heel. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and for all we know, since we're ignorant, we're uninformed, maybe the whole thing about his mom holding him in the river Styx by the heel when he was a baby was made up after he had died as a way to explain why he
Yeah.
lost to that injury. So I mean,
Yeah.
just continue. Just a thought I had.
Uh, and I agree with that wholeheartedly because I was just about to hop into that. Like, with some of these stories, like, there's one about Pandora's box about her releasing evil upon the world because she was really curious. I think that's just a reason to explain illness and sickness and why people do bad things because I feel like it's just human nature to do bad things because animals kill each other, but they didn't open up a box, you know? I just feel like that's just something to explain. My dog is climbing on my chair. I'm sorry. Hold on. But see, no, that also goes with Pandora's box. Like my dog, because dogs are smart, you know, like animals are smart, but they didn't open up a box, you know. So to me, some of those legends are just like explaining why people do things and why things happen, in my opinion. And that to me, that goes for all pantheons. No disrespect to like
Yeah.
whatever you worship or whatever you're into. Like that's just my beliefs on it. But I do think that sometimes especially back then, they really got crazy. With Valhalla, I think that Vikings really just like to fight a lot, and that was their way of coping with dying because
Yeah.
people are afraid of the unknown, and we don't know what's going to happen, and so like. I'm sure a Viking would not be too welcome in heaven because he's a Viking. So I think that in their own way, they were like, well, what if we made our own heaven where we could, do what we love, getting drunk all the time, partying, fighting each other, and Valhalla fits that perfectly because Vikings, that's what they do all the time. And Norse mythology, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much their whole shtick. And with Thor, in Thor, they in the Marvel universe, they explain it in kind of a good way. Asgard is like a whole nother planet, and they come to Earth from Asgard. That explains why Asgard doesn't exist on Earth. And I kind of follow that philosophy because, like, I imagine, what if that was the case here? Like, what if aliens did come down all that time ago? And we weren't able to record it in a also detailed way besides painting it. Like we couldn't take pictures back then. So like, what if there was somebody with a dog head, but like, not necessarily a dog head, but like you get me right. I don't know how to explain it, but what if an alien did come down theoretically with a dog head, and he was like, "Hey, yo, I'm gonna help y'all make this giant triangle or whatever." Like. That's just how I'm looking at it.
Hey, y'all building
because
triangles? Yo, let me help. I'm feeling good today.
I'm feeling generous, and because the idea of Anubis, I can get where that comes from. I sort of feel like that's on the side of bestiality. I think that's kind of where that originates from in my brain. I'm not sure what the legend on Anubis is to a full extent, but I do feel like it's some type of cross. And what Horace said is literally the embodiment of hatred, and like that's a human nature. It's a human emotion. I think a lot of gods are just based off human nature and human emotions and just nature in general,
And some explanations for human emotions and things of that nature, like Aphrodite and Cupid, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
And so yeah, that's just my personal take on mythical gods or gods in general. Yeah,
Okay.
pantheons.
What's and what is your definition of a god? What is a god for you?
Yeah.
From a god is a god. I guess it would still be the same. I think to me, a god is just the explanation of why something is the way it is. Like with thunder, Zeus gets mad and he throws a thunderbolt. With God, like the Christian God, he created all of life. So he's for him, I think he would just be the creator. For me, I think for me, a god would have to do something significant to be a god. You know, like something out of the world significant for me.
Hmm.
Something that's a higher power, I guess. I guess the same way other people look at gods as a higher power, but they have to actually like be a higher power, you know,
Hmm.
or have that type of higher power, in my opinion.
Hmm. How do you
So
feel?
like, what's it for me? Like the sense of gods and stuff is like what he said, like a coping mechanism.
Hmm.
Like to a certain degree, some of like in areas in which like since gods nowadays don't really affect like human life and whatsoever,
Hmm.
I wouldn't put it past, or like to a certain degree, I'd see gods as like a race, right? A race of beings that lived in an era that did things, right? And then to a certain, it was
Hmm.
like they were relics of art age now, right? So,
Hmm.
uh, what they did was no longer important to like how we live life now. So they just disappeared. But to a certain degree, gods are like literally just a race that
Hmm.
lived in an era.
That's an interesting take on that. Honestly, I think that's pretty interesting. Continue. I'm intrigued.
So like gods like the Greek pantheon, the Chinese pantheon, the Japanese, and like the ideas of Buddhism and stuff. Well,
Hmm.
Buddhism was a story about like a normal person, but like gods, those have like divine powers, were just a era in which a race of beings existed
Hmm.
at a time. So like people experience like the Greek gods and how they lived in Olympus and they didn't touch the mortal world except in certain actions
Hmm.
like
With their
to
children.
procreate. Yeah, to
Yeah.
procreate because they had problems with.
Built like that.
Yeah, they were built like that. But like the way it sounds, gods were less of like humans that changed to a certain degree of them
Hmm.
just being their own race of being like a species.
Hmm. Yeah, like back to anything can happen.
Yeah,
Like the thought that an immortal jellyfish is commonplace is freaking appalling. That there's an immortal being, and that's just like, ah, it's normal. It's normal. Like people always like, oh, I want to live in a fantasy world. Man, we're in a fantasy world. We have like these freaking lizards that run on the water, my guy. we we have immortal jellyfish. We have
fish that fly.
sharks that eat each other in the womb. What?
Yeah, yeah,
You
that's
know,
wild.
it's just
Have
so
sharks.
crazy. Yeah, it's just like the thought that people like we've been talking about. I've said it like 8 times and it's changed like every time, but the theme the theme is always like I guess the overall theme, without changing it literally every time, is the theme of the unknown. And not necessarily in a religious text, but in like a scientific, I guess. The fact is, like you were saying with gods, it's a coping mechanism for some. And y'all know I'm Christian. I go to church. I believe in it. But I am not one of those people that will be like, oh my gosh, you are horrible. You are going to hell and all this stuff because you don't believe. Because in my belief, it's real. If I believe it, it's real, and that's something
Yeah,
that a lot of people believe, and it's good. Like one thing that I've always been told growing up is that, and I guess I should preface this and say I believe that every god, or most gods, thought up by humankind are real, and this is why. It's because I've always been taught from since my young age. It's one of these things like where it's not like I came to this conclusion. It's that it's been born into my head since I've been born, and I believe it wholeheartedly. And I've always been told by a family member of mine that there's only one true God. And for me, as a Christian, that just validated all my thoughts. Because when I was younger, I was like, well, if there's all these gods, then why is my God the real one, and all this stuff. And we're not discussing the facets of religion here, but there's some prerequisite that you need to know about me personally so you can understand my lookout on it. Because I believe in, all this stuff. I believe that because there's also things like if people believe in it, it is real. Like I have already said. And if enough people believe, there was a god of thunder, what is stopping us from saying there was? Like we've already talked
Yeah.
about throughout this. Like what's stopping us from saying there was? And what if, let's say the way that we explain this is when people think about it and pray and put their belief in it, it's real. But as time fades, as empires crumble, as history continues ever forward, these deities lose their, their mojo jojo, their, their use,
or
their
they go back.
existence, and it's an interesting thought. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Richard, so you can
No,
continue.
no.
But it was just
Okay.
I felt like it segued well into that, But I just had to make sure I put in my thoughts on it because I didn't want to, just like come out here being like, yeah, bro, I believe in everything without having any explanation whatsoever. I
Yeah.
think your take on it is both of y'all's takes on it are like really spot on. And I'd say out of us three sitting here, I'm probably the most religious.
Yeah.
And
That's for
I've
sure.
only
Yeah.
started going to church again recently, and it's just for some other reasons. And it's but I am not at all offended, nor do I feel off put by the discussion of other gods and things like that. As I believe, why would why would millions of people believe that this is real in some capacity? Because like you could argue,
Oh,
well, this god is literally just the embodiment of this natural process, like death. Death is scary and a natural process, and the only way that these people could understand it is by assigning a god to it, like a belief. And who's to say that God's not real? Like we've been saying, who's to say? Who's to say? Who's to say? Because there's just so much we don't know. It's a very interesting topic, and y'all both have really good input on it, and I want to hear some back and forth what y'all think about, like overall as a group, I guess, God, thought not like the Christian God, but pantheons, anything, like any God, spiritual figure, all this, without going into religion. Obviously, we aren't trying to, talk smack on anybody. Everyone believes what they believe, but the the thought of all these gods for different things, like people argue that Cthulhu's real. But we know Cthulhu was made by H.P. Lovecraft. He wrote a book about it, and it became a thing.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah.
like we said, who's to
That's
say
true.
that the belief in it doesn't make it real, or it does make it
Yeah.
real rather? And it's I didn't mean to blow in my mic, my bad. But it's an
And
interesting, thought because it leads you to. I really wish we had our old high school teacher, the philosopher, in this mug. I bet he'd have some interesting things like
yeah,
all drugs should be legal. What?
I'm sure.
Yeah, he was crazy. But it's an interesting
I'm sure he's
discussion.
going crazy.
Yeah, he would. And his thing was philosophy on religion. It was a big thing for him.
Uh, mhm.
Probably have some I
But
imagine. Oh, sorry. Continue.
and like you said a little while ago, if enough people have faith, like anything is believable, like you said.
Hmm.
And so like with Greek mythology, that's kind of how it was because if you people will make sacrifices to the gods so that way they can have safe travel across the ocean,
Hmm.
or so that way their crops wouldn't go bad, because they had faith that if somebody died for that god, good things are gonna happen, because everybody believed it. Like in the 300 movie, they straight up drugged this chick and just to get
They
a
did.
vision or whatever. Yeah, they straight up drugged her to whoever I believe it was Ares. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but
Dude,
they
I
straight up
think it's
drugged her.
Ares. Ares or
Yeah,
the other god of war in Roman, which is Mars, I guess. Yeah, Mars. Dude, that was
and so
crazy.
yeah, so if enough people have faith, and if enough people will follow it, not even necessarily blindly,
Mhm.
but just in general, if enough people will follow that religion or pantheon, I feel like the power of it, even if it's unrealistic, I feel like the power of it will be super strong because
Mhm.
not to talk down on any religion, but some religions, their following is pretty huge.
Mhm.
And sometimes some, like, I don't want to say, I'm not trying to talk down on Christianity, but
Yeah.
I used to be in like this cultist type of church, like they I don't want to. It wasn't like a normal church. Like it was made specifically for kids.
Oh.
It was kind of like,
It was like
yeah,
I guess school church, I guess, or something like that. Like,
yeah,
is it like where they would teach you I believe I went to and it's like Sunday church or daycare basically, and they would like be like, so because God did this, you have this, and
Yeah.
because this happened, you have this. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Continue.
Yeah, and like you said a while ago, Kagan, like how sometimes you would have questions.
Hmm.
I'll be questioning things too. Like sometimes I would be like, so if God exists, why does this and this happen? And
Hmm.
the answer I would get would just be,
Have
that's
faith.
just how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I would be like, well, we kill animals, so does that make us killers? And
Hmm.
the guy straight up told me, well, we have to eat, and so I was like,
Gotta do
oh,
what you gotta do.
well, yeah. And so, I'm not trying to talk about sins and all that because
Yeah,
that's a
that's
topic
a
for
whole
another day.
different day, but
Yeah.
it plays
Uh,
into our pantheon. It's some background that's needed for
yeah.
our discussion.
And so yeah, that's just my take on it. Um, I'm really more influenced by Greek mythology because I learned about it in the school, but
Hmm.
other mythologies I don't know too much about them. Uh,
Well, that's why we decided to
yeah.
discuss Greece specifically because that's the
Yeah.
one that everyone talks about. Even though there's a whole tale that this I believe it's called Devil's Rock or Devil's Plateau, something like that, in America, one state. I honestly cannot remember the state, but it has all these striations or stripes carved into the
Mhm.
rocks all around it. And the story is like attached to that by the local indigenous Americans is that a bunch of Native Americans were running from a massive bear, and then the bear was trying to claw to the top, and it left these marks in it. And and it's a belief, and if you give that belief, credence, it's real. If you
Yeah.
believe in it, it's real. Because who's to say, without going too deep off the end, that what we are doing right now, talking to each other, that is real? Without trying to go
Yeah.
too far over it, what is really dictating existence? And there's so much that defies, like we've talked about it all
Yeah.
day, the existence of leviathans, the existence of the way that this jellyfish is
Hmm.
immortal. Like the mantis shrimp can see in way more wavelengths than us, and I believe the statistic or fact is that the punch of the mantis shrimp for like the smallest amount of time, like
Oh
ever, like it's
yeah.
so small, is the
It's,
heat of the sun
yeah,
because
it's
of
pretty
how
strong.
fast it is. And I've seen a video
Yeah.
recently, actually. If I could find it, I'll put it in the video, but I doubt I will, if I'm being honest. It's so far, I don't even know how to find it. But there's this man, and he catches a mantis shrimp, and he's in full boots and all this stuff. And this mantis shrimp hits his boot, it goes through the boot, pierces his skin, and he starts bleeding all over. And I was like, that's crazy, the fact that this little shrimp can impact so much damage. So, like we've been saying, the unknown, the theme of the unknown. How do we know this or that or this? How do we know this doesn't exist? How do we know this does exist? And that's something that humanity has grappled with since the existence of our consciousness, which, how knows? And that plays into, a lot of things. And over our discussion of gods, I'd like to conclude it by just saying, again, we aren't trying to crap on any religions. We were just discussing an interesting topic that we think others might find interesting, and it's just it's a very different topic. Other podcasts, all drama and crap like that. I think topics like this are more engaging to listen to, more interesting. And again, we can do this for fun. And if you hear this, know that. And I'd like to end this with a thought I had when I was at the dentist. I think
Wait,
I've already talked
hold
about
up.
you.
Before
Oh
we
yeah,
end,
go ahead.
there was what's it on the topic of like your perspective of religion and stuff, and
Hmm.
like how you grew up with it.
Yeah.
So, as I grew up, where I would say I'm Buddhist, but I grew up loosely on Buddhist. And like
Hmm.
when I asked about like the identification of like how Buddhism works and stuff, it's like God exists. He did his thing. He ain't gonna fuck with you, no matter what you do. He's up in there living his life because he did what he did, right?
Hmm.
And so, and then from the media that I saw as a child about gods and stuff, gods were like people did things, and in occasion gods would come down from like the sky in the heavens and stuff, and then meddle a little bit, but then they'd go back. Hence,
Hmm.
like me growing up to believing instead
Yeah.
of gods being this immortally powered divine, divine doing stuff like for humanity, and like having like the Christianity, it is all God's plan and stuff.
Hmm.
Gods are seen for me because of how I've grown up as a race
Hmm.
that did stuff like that. It's
It's
a
an
little thing I
interesting
want
thought.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it just shows the difference of like how growing up changes your belief, and that plays into everything we've talked today about the cryptids, all that stuff. Because if you're born in this area, you're gonna think this way. Like Japanese culture is very dependent on the sea, and they have a large respect for the sea, despite whatever they do. Won't get
Hmm.
into that, but it's uh, I guess circumstance can dictate belief in a lot of cases, and that's where like there are people who grow up and they only know Christianity. They've never even it ran into Buddhism, atheism. Like their whole community, like you can be born into a religious community that lives in the woods, like or lives out of traditional norms, like the Amish. They live out of traditional norms, or the Mennonites. They are solely devoted to their religion, and so people will have different thoughts and they'll have different opinions on everything.
Yeah.
And like we were saying, like we're no theologists. We aren't any experts. We don't qualify for anything. We're just talking, and it's an interesting topic that goes across everything. And obviously, this has been like all a jumbled podcast, but the fact is, this is supposed to be enjoyable. And I think the topics that we've discussed are so interesting and not talked about that they're at least, and they aren't even meant to be thought provoking. It's just supposed to explore some thoughts, and it's just
Yeah.
it's interesting. And if y'all don't have any further topics, do y'all by chance,
Uh, I'm
Uh,
empty out.
or any thoughts rather on what we're doing?
uh, to be honest, like literally nothing for the first time in my life, nothing comes to the top of my head because
Um,
we covered everything that
mhm.
pretty much we wanted to cover for this
And
one.
I would like to end this out by saying I had a thought when I was at the dentist. I was
Hmm.
getting my cavities drilled, all this crap, you know, pain. But I had a thought that I've discussed with various people. I think I've discussed it with Richard already. Is are we like at what do does what constitutes you? Are you your brain? Are you your body? Where is your soul? Is there a soul? And it's an interesting thought. Of course, I believe there's a soul, but I'm torn as to where I always thought my soul was if I had to pick a place in the center of my body. But that's not how it would work. Personally, I was like, am I my brain or am I me? Because our
Yeah.
brains are controlling our bodies, but are our
Mhm.
bodies us? It's like a crackhead thought, and obviously I'm no crackhead, but it's one of those really crazy thoughts. But I find it thought provoking as there are animals that can exist without a brain, but are they something or are they nothing? As without a brain, do they have a consciousness? And if they have a consciousness, what's wrong with it? Do they have a soul? Things of that nature. And I wonder what y'all's opinions are. I guess we'll start with Richard. Do you think you are your brain? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's just such an interesting topic.
I feel like in the sense of like where your consciousness is, scientifically speaking, it would be your brain, right? Your brain
Mhm.
comes with all your cognitive thought stuff. Your conscious would be your brain, scientifically speaking. But like the idea of like where your soul is and how your soul like is placed, where it's placed,
Mhm.
is like I feel like completely up to you. Like in I think Chinese or just say like an Asian or like an ideal of sort. The soul is like in your core of your body, so your
Mhm.
chest, and that's like all your energy gathers to your body in your chest. But then like you could say in off religion, or not even a religion, the idea that your soul is probably like in the heavens, and your mind is tethered from your
Mhm.
heavens to your body. And it's the idea of like where your soul is I feel like completely up to the person.
Mhm.
So like you could say, oh, my soul is in my feet because you know I'm a track star, right? I run,
I'm a runner. I'm a track star.
and
uh,
so my soul is where my feet are because my
mhm.
feet is what's carrying me to my
Dude,
success at the
I'm
track.
sorry. Pun. Soul. You get it? Souls. Oh, that's lit. Maybe, hey, bro. There's no
Hey,
such
bro.
thing as a coincidence.
Or like, my soul is where my lungs are because
Mhm.
vocally I'm a lyrics. Or like, hey, bro, yo, Asio, this is a whole song, bro. You need to make a song about souls and where they be
Oh
and how
yeah.
they affect your life, bro. Like,
No. Plug in the description. You want to plug in the description?
yo, give the man a
Uh,
plug.
yeah, man.
I'll
If you
plug
plug me
you
in the
in.
description, I love it.
F Team Simple at on everything.
Yes,
That new
sir.
song, do it for you. It's pretty lit.
Did it for you. Yeah.
Like for me, the soul is like, I would say in the chest,
Hmm.
but like it's honestly just in
Subjective.
existence. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
subjective to some degree. And it was like about the thing with like the Rick and Morty shit, where like you believe in something, and then over time you like forget it and stuff. And it's
Hmm.
the way Malik believes things, where it's like, or like atheists believe, like people who are learned under religion and then slowly back away from it. It's because due time, it goes away.
Hmm.
And so, but like for the idea of conscience, it's like it's hard to explain. It's like it's a feeling at most, at
Yeah.
best.
Hmm.
I was gonna say something else, but I completely forgot about it because the soul shit got me.
The soul shit is kind of funny though.
Oh, okay, I remember now. It was on the topic of religion, and
Hmm.
it's based on the background of the character I made, Zeltrax,
Hmm.
right? So the idea of Zeltrax's background is he's lived a long enough life to experience all religions and take
Hmm.
his eye on everything else, and he came to the conclusion of making his own,
Hmm.
right? So he made a religion based on the stars because that's the only thing consistent in his life,
Hmm.
right? And so religion was every place's religion is a coping mechanism, or like how he said, like the rain is chalk,
Hmm.
because we needed to put someone on the idea of this is caused by this person, a being. And so for the character, it's like all these religions didn't make sense to him, so he created his own. And then his soul is in the stars and shit.
Hmm. I think that's a good, example. And for reference, we're discussing a D&D character that we made. We played D&D. Yeah, we be like that. And he created that
Yeah.
character, and it has an interesting thought that I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that example. That was a good example. Like I wouldn't have thought of it. Um, and like you said, the idea I think is subjective. I think you're right there because it's another one of those unknown. Who we can't prove the existence of a soul, neither can we deny it. And Scientologists. I'm gonna be real here. I'm gonna. This is the I'm judging you a little bit, Scientologists. All right. Y'all believe that an alien came and dropped ice full of souls into a volcano, and then the souls escaped and made humanity. And y'all are aliens. I don't subscribe to that. I think that's more far fetched than being creating us as like for one word to get I don't know. There's a lot of logistical issues like where you got the souls and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Where they go?
but the I feel like it's completely subjective. The existence as well is subjective as do monkeys have a soul? Do gorillas have a soul? They can speak, they can eat, they feel grief, they can commit murder, they can do all this stuff. Do they have a soul? And I feel like the idea of a soul is subjective, like we were discussing, and it's just it's an interesting topic. Oh, what's your opinion on it, Sayo?
My opinion on souls.
Mhm.
So I kind of have a theory on like souls. So
Mhm.
like I'll say my theory first, and then I'll say my opinion. So like my theory on souls is like it's kind of like a reincarnation thing.
Mhm.
Like when you die,
They're
you
recycled.
just you're reborn into something new. But like the way I look at it, it's like, what if there's a whole operation going on? Like what if this is actually like a video game, like The Matrix, or some of the sort, like a program. What if, when you die, you wake up in your real world body, or supposed real world body that's not your real life one. That's kind of confusing. That blew my mind a little bit. But you wake up in your other reality, and you're like, oh man, I just logged out. I just died, and then you're like, well, I want to hook back in, and then you start all the way over from square one. In my mind, I feel like you would not remember anything, and like the choices that you would make would be like strictly your own. It's kind of like Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
because God, the way God does it, He doesn't drive your choices. He lets you make your own choices because He free will, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you partake in, that's really on you. If you sin or if you don't sin, I mean, you knew the risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's really on you. But I feel like with this reincarnation theory I have, I feel like it's more of, yeah, you have to take the chance sometimes, you know. You have to, either you get lucky or you don't get lucky, you know. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like sometimes it's just kind of sucks, you know. And also, to my opinion on it as a whole, I feel like my mind is what controls everything, because I feel like the conscious is really too strong to put over the body, because in my opinion, it's mind over matter. Because like, if I can't think about moving my arm, then I won't be able to move my arm, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Then that's how I look at it. But I feel like what Richard said was right too. But to me, I just feel like being able to think makes all the difference in everything. Because if you did have a soul, I mean, sure, you could, be alive, but it would like to me, it would be like being in a coma, because
Mm-hmm.
the brain is, I think, it's really the strongest thing alive, especially a
Mm-hmm.
human brain. Because if you look at what we've done, I mean, compared to every other living thing on planet Earth, I mean, we've been putting in work from
Mm-hmm.
day one.
And I would like
Building
to.
boats, building spaceships.
I'd like to clarify because I'm curious. You don't. When you're talking about like your reincarnation of the soul,
Yeah.
do you believe we are in a simulation?
Not wholeheartedly. It's just something I
I
dabble on
thought, okay,
sometimes.
because it
Like,
kind of came
like,
across as you were like,
yeah,
we are in a video game. I was like, oh,
yeah,
crazy. I was like,
yeah,
am I? It's like, am I code? Code
yeah.
switch?
I just
Yeah,
dabble on
but
it a
that's
lot. I
not.
just dabble on
Yeah,
theories.
like Elon Musk said, before getting, try not to get too off
Well,
topic. We'll get back real
yeah.
quick. But Elon Musk said, like he said, we are in a simulation, and my thought is, well, if we're in a simulation, give all your money to charities, my guy. why
That's
you
facts.
hoarding your money right now?
That's facts.
If it doesn't matter, like, I don't know. Just continue. Like, yeah, I think you have an interesting thought going on there.
But yeah. So I just feel like the mind. I just feel like it's
Mhm.
it's it's really just too strong to like not be the controlling factor of like what the body does or what the
Mhm.
soul does, because like I said, the conscious is pretty strong,
Mhm.
and not every living thing is capable of having like this level of thought. And so to me, I just feel like with that level of thought just comes that level of control,
Mhm.
and
And
that's
so,
my take on it.
would you say the second part of that is, are we our brain or are we our body? Like, what do you constitute? Both? Or do you think you are your brain, just controlling your body? Like, what is your opinion on that?
I think that I'm the brain controlling the body, just because honestly, I couldn't explain why I think I'm the brain, but
Mhm.
I just think that
Feel
the brain, yeah, I just feel like the brain is just what makes everything happen, like
Yeah.
I feel like it all starts from there,
Mhm.
to put it simply, in my opinion.
this is gonna sound off topic, but it's gonna go back on topic.
Mhm.
Have you ever seen Death Parade, the anime?
I have
I
not.
sure have not seen Death Parade.
Okay. So Death Parade is like an anime about an instance of reincarnation,
Mhm.
right? So it takes place in like an area unknown, but when people die, they end up here and they get
Yeah.
trialed on, and they are either decided on by these beings to either go to like quote unquote be reincarnated or go into like a void, right? And it's like the process in which if they do this,
Mhm.
the the conscience is like the thought, the mind of the people, right? But
Mhm.
when their soul is sent to reincarnation, it is no longer with their consciousness. It's a being within them that's what gives them life.
Mm.
And so, like, the soul could be and the conscience could be two separate things. Because like you could go to your trial to see whether you get reincarnated or not, and then it's all your past, your memories, all your thought, and how you like prove to yourself you are worth reincarnation. But when you are sent to reincarnation, it is your soul that's reincarnated to give life to another mind, to another conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like an instance of like you don't know what's real, and reincarnation, God, and stuff, and religion is just a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you pull that cookie from?
Oh, you got cookies now. Hey, Lamau.
Hey, I'm an alien, man. I just do things like that.
I was like thinking, and my man looked to the left and he pulled out a cookie. But yeah, that was like pretty much on the idea of like the reincarnation. Because he brought up reincarnation, that's why I thought of it.
And you
Y'all
know,
have
more.
transparent mirrors one?
No,
Oh,
it's built like that. And back on the like the reincarnation stuff, there's actually like this interesting story I've heard. I don't know if it's fact checkable or whatever, but oh, there we go. This young kid, right, has this like birthmark on his like left shoulder, or like in between, I guess his or like right under his collarbone near your heart. And he says his name was like Tommy or something like that, and that he was a World War II fighter pilot in his past life, and that he got
Oh, I know
shot
what you're
down
talking
and
about.
died. And they found a guy by the same name, flew the same plane, died the same way. And this segues into something recent I've learned, is that scientists have been able to take a cell from one slug and put it in the other slug, and it gave the other slug its memories, or a memory. And that it's interesting, as that means that theoretically, possibly the implanting of consciousness could be done if the cells can be transferred into another slug, and that slug would have the same memories. Now, don't ask me how. I know that how they learned that the slugs have the same memories. They're slugs. I don't know what they did. Like, slug, be slug, and they were like, wow, he knew. He knew. I don't know, but that's interesting. And I was like, holy crap, that's just like a super different, thing. You building a fort over there?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, I was wondering what he was doing over there. I was like, that Pokemon kind of going off.
And I guess to end out the podcast, because that's really all we have. We
Yeah.
just want to like hang out. Like, what do y'all want to talk about? Like anything, like I guess viral news, anything of that nature that you want to discuss?
I think that should be a topic for another podcast. Episode 2 of, the wash.
Episode 2, yeah, the wash. Well, I'll tell y'all right now. In about a week, have another one.
Oh yeah.
We'll be having.
Not bro, tonight, tomorrow night, bro.
You man, just start pumping them out super fast. We're gonna have another person and have an interview with them. Super popular YouTuber, very popular.
Probably
Slight
play
Smeat.
Smeat.
Yeah, he plays Smeat.
Smeat, yeah. Ooh. Oh, Floatzel of the couch. What is your wisdom?
Today's fact of the day is that the Cookie Monster is a lie. I'm the real Cookie Monster. And follow your boy FTM Simba. Listen to his music; it's pretty good.
FTM Simba on everything.
Thank you. You can have these cookies back. I was gonna steal them, but
I get some pancakes.
yeah, only because he said I was good. Only because he said I was good.
All right. Well, this was, I guess, podcast 1 of the wash, and I guess we can end this out. Let's hit some sick moves.
Oh, I got you.
Sick moves.
Hold on,
I
let
got
me
you.
get on collision.
Oh, I forgot how to dance. I'm just
You're pretty
teabagging.
good right now.
Alright. Hold on, let me get on the table. Hold on.
How do you
Here
do
we
it? What's the
go.
command?
Bro,
So
I'm
sad.
sorry.
R,
Here,
like
hold
R and
R.
expressions.
Yeah. He's so sad.
Oh yes. Okay. Thank. I was. If you say, "Hey, little Mao," he'll reply that back. Won't get cheese on your mama's rack. An alien, and I love that too. Tell Batman that I love him too. I'm an alien to be respected. I love him, not rejected. Hope he loves me too. Cause I'll do anything for that man too.
That's episode 1 of the wash right there. Bye.